This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Shutdown, showdown. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is vowing to block a funding bill that would prevent a government shutdown at midnight Friday.
Republicans chose a partisan path, drafting their continuing resolution without any input from congressional Democrats.
One Democrat actually did vote for the spending package. House Speaker Mike Johnson says the ball is squarely in Schumer's court.
He must determine whether he wants to fund the government, do the responsible thing, or whether he wants to shut the government down.
Florida Senator Ashley Moody.
If this is a shutdown, it'll be the Schumer shutdown. This is completely on the hands of the Democrats.
Republicans need the support of 6 Democrats in the Senate to get the spending bill across the finish line, and right now, they don't have it. What to do with Khalil? That is the other big story today. A federal judge says former Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil will remain behind bars, but he cannot be deported. Not yet, anyhow. The 30-year-old is being held by ICE agents in Louisiana. Arab activists say because he's a green card holder, his detention is unlawful.
What happened to Mahmoud Khalil is nothing short of extraordinary and shocking and outrageous.
The Trump administration wants Khalil deported for fomenting anti-Semitism on college campuses in New York City. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with.
Khalil is a native of Syria and has become the poster child for the Gaza war protest movement at Columbia and other schools. He moved to this country 3 years ago and is married to a U.S. citizen who is 8 months pregnant. President Trump continues to defend his tough new tariffs on steel and aluminum imports.
The United States of America is going to take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries.
He's threatening new tariffs on the EU after the European Union promised to levy a tax against us beginning April 1st. The president today meeting at the White House with the Secretary General of NATO. Mr. Trump argues European leaders need to foot more of the bill in providing for Ukraine security. We get more from Lucas Tomlinson at Fox News.
Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff is expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin this week to try and navigate an end to Russia's war in Ukraine after Ukrainian officials agreed to a 30-day ceasefire.
Rebecca Heinrichs is a foreign policy expert at the Hudson Institute.
Ukraine is still in the defensive position, so Ukraine can want a ceasefire all day. But if the Russians continue their assault against Ukraine, Ukraine is going to have to fight back. And so the ball really truly is in Russia's court.
Our coverage continues with correspondent Holly Williams.
Vladimir Putin doesn't look like a man who wants to lay down his guns. In a video released yesterday, he visited troops in southern Russia wearing military fatigues and talking strategy with his commanders.
President Trump has expressed an interest in face-to-face talks with Putin. No date yet for those talks has been set. 2 stranded astronauts are facing another delay. A SpaceX mission to bring them home was suddenly called off last night due to a technical issue on the launch pad at Cape Canaveral. That means Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams will spend at least another day and night where they've been the past 9 months, in orbit. Here's NBC's Tom Costello.
NASA and SpaceX are going to try again tomorrow, not today, because they're worried about high winds. And they need to understand this problem and dissect it. It has to do with a hydraulic issue on the clamp arm that holds the rocket up to the ground structure. It's not the rocket's problem. It's a problem with that clamp arm. But until they do figure this out, Butch and Sonny's relief team will remain grounded. Butch and Sonny will remain up there.
Those two astronauts have been marooned since last June aboard the International Space Station. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin says he's going after waste, fraud, and abuse within the Environmental Protection Agency. Zeldin's rolling back rules on pollution, as well as climate change and air and water regulation.
We can protect the environment. We can make sure all Americans have access to clean air, land, and water, while also not bankrupting our country. The thing from the left is that they'll push these mandates and these laws that will drive up the costs of living for the people who can least afford it.
Zeldin's freezing $20 billion in climate change grants issued by the Biden administration under the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. Police in Waterbury, Connecticut have arrested a mother who allegedly held her emaciated stepson in her home for decades.
I can't imagine how horrible his conditions were.
That neighbor telling local reporters he's never seen the 32-year-old in public before. The man was discovered by firefighters after he set that home ablaze. WFSB's Amanda Callahan.
56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan of Waterbury was arrested by police as she's accused of allegedly abusing her stepson for more than 20 years. Now, he's 32 years old, and he told police that he was held captive in an 8x9 room since he was 11 years old. That's more than 20 years.
Sullivan was arraigned yesterday on kidnapping and cruelty charges. According to the group Do No Harm, there have been almost 14,000 sex change operations performed on children in this country the past 5 years.
To every child who is dealing with these same feelings, you are beautiful the way that you are. And God does not make mistakes. There is nothing wrong with your femininity or with your masculinity or with your body.
Chloe Cole underwent a gender reassignment surgery when she was just 14. Today, she's a leading voice on the dangers of such surgical procedures.
I wish, firstly and foremost, that I had been told no, that I was not actually a boy, that I could never become the opposite sex, no matter what drugs or what treatments I was put on, and that I was beautiful the way that I was.
President Trump has signed an executive order that bans federal funding to any hospital that performs sex change operations on kids. Still to come on the Noon Report, burn ban in Steuben County. Oneida County sues the governor, and drugged driving is a big problem.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin Williams. Well, those temperatures down yesterday, but they're heading up today. I've got the numbers in the forecast coming up in 10.
All right, looking pretty good out there. Thank you, Kevin. Let's check the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Steuben County has just declared a state of emergency due to the high potential for wildfires. That emergency order took effect Wednesday and will remain in effect until Monday, March 17th. County Manager Jack Wheeler says due to warmer temperatures, low humidity, and strong winds, conditions are ideal for wildfires. An outdoor burn ban is also in effect until mid-May in Steuben County. Oneida County is considering a lawsuit against Governor Hochul. County Executive Anthony Picenti says the governor was wrong to blacklist striking prison guards from ever holding state jobs again in New York.
That's our responsibility to the taxpayers, to our constituency, to the people of this county, to make sure that we are hiring people who are responsible and who are worthy of that. And that's our right.
The county executive says home rule makes the governor's executive order illegal. Oneida County is already in the process of hiring back some 50 prison guards who were let go by the state. Picenti wants to employ them at the county jail. More protests yesterday at the New York State Capitol, but it wasn't prison guards doing the protesting. This time it was nurses. Nurses from all across New York converged on Albany demanding enforcement of the safe staffing law. This nurse says that law has been largely ignored by hospitals since it was passed 4 years ago.
The safe staffing law does not do enough to provide for safe staffing in the hospitals, and there's not really any enforcement within the law that holds the hospitals accountable.
The safe staffing law sets minimum nurse-to-patient ratios at hospitals. Geisinger Health is building a new cancer center in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. It's already begun site preparation along Route 15 near Bucknell University. The two-story, 40,000 square foot facility will open next year. New legislation in the Pennsylvania House aims to ease medical debt for residents whose bills have been sent to collections. We get details on that from Family Life's Brian Query.
Sponsored by Representative Arvind Venkat, an emergency physician, the bill would establish a program within the state health department to pay off qualifying debts. Venkat says the measure could improve health outcomes, particularly in rural areas where medical debt is a major issue. The bill also seeks to improve hospital charity care transparency by standardizing financial assistance applications. While it has bipartisan support, funding remains a challenge, and lawmakers must agree on an appropriation for the program to move forward. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Despite cutbacks, Penn State will likely maintain a presence in northeastern Pennsylvania. Family Life's Mark Webster has more.
Yeah, in an update posted on the PSU website, Penn State's president recommends that at least one campus in northeastern PA stay open, as well as one in the Pittsburgh area. Last month, the university unveiled plans to close up to a dozen branch campuses. There are 4 in the northeast area: Penn State, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Hazleton, and Schuylkill. Financial problems and declining enrollment cited as the reasons behind the planned consolidation. A final call on which campuses will close could come by May, but take effect no earlier than the end of the 26-27 academic year. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you kindly, Mark. A new report by AAA says marijuana is the third most commonly used substance in this country, trailing only nicotine and alcohol. Consuming cannabis is legal now in 28 states, including New York. In Pennsylvania, it's legal for medicinal purposes. AAA's Elizabeth Carey is concerned about the number of people who smoke marijuana and then get behind the wheel of a car.
The vast majority were saying that they do drive the same day that they consume, with about half saying, we get behind the wheel an hour or less before we start to drive, and that's really troublesome on the roads.
Carey tells Spectrum News there needs to be a greater public awareness campaign about the dangers of drugged driving.
Everyone says, it's so bad to drink and drive, but then you see these studies that show people say, it's okay to drive when I'm high, and all the research shows that is not the case. It's dangerous to drive when you're high.
AAA says the marijuana industry needs to be proactively involved in getting the message out, especially to teenagers, about the dangers of drugged driving. Sports is next. It's the 2-minute drill right here on the Family Life Noon Report. The season is over with for the Syracuse Orange men's basketball team. They got blown out last night in the ACC tournament, falling to SMU 73-53. Syracuse finishes the season with an overall record of 14-19, 5 games below 500. Patrick Kane had 2 goals and 3 assists to lead the Detroit Red Wings to a 7-3 win over the Buffalo Sabres last night. Kane is a native of Buffalo and ranks 3rd all-time among American-born NHL players in points. Both of his goals came on power plays. The Sabres remain in last place in the Eastern Conference. They've lost 7 of their last 8. On the hardwood last night, the New York Knicks beat the Portland Trail Blazers on a last-second three-pointer in overtime by sharpshooter Mikal Bridges. Here's what it sounded like on TV.
Inbound. Knicks break. Hart gets it right back to Bridges. Bridges puts up a 3.
Bridges knocked down the buzzer, beating 3 from the top of the key. Afterward, he told reporters he knew it was in when it left his hand.
Yeah, it looked good. Sometimes I fade a little bit, it might go a little left or right. But as I kept falling to the left, it looked like it was staying straight, so it felt good.
Bridges finished with a game-high 33 points. The Knicks are 3rd in the Eastern Conference. The Blazers have lost 5 in a row. And a future Hall of Famer experiencing something for the first time in his NFL career. Aaron Rodgers Rodgers is a free agent. The Jets made the decision yesterday to release him. He's now able to sign with whomever he chooses. The New York Giants, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Minnesota Vikings have all expressed an interest in the 41-year-old four-time MVP. At the Family Life Sports Desk, I'm Bob Price. And still to come on the Noon Report, lunar eclipse, shutdown, showdown, and is hate speech free speech? The complicated case of Mahmoud Khalil.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. The long civil war in Syria may have officially ended in December, but the bloodshed continues. According to Newsweek and several other outlets, over 1,000 civilians, including women and children, have been slaughtered in Syria in just the last few days. The details are still emerging, but what's known is horrifying. Many of the dead are members of the Alawite community, a Muslim sect that dominated Syrian politics for decades, that is, until the fall of dictator Bashar al-Assad last year. The new government regime is carrying out these revenge killings to eliminate all pro-Assad remnants. One doctor quoted by the Washington Post described, quote, "Entire families were being wiped out. They entered homes and carried out mass killings of all Alawites," end quote. And according to reports, many Christians are being caught in the crossfire, if not being directly targeted. Some believers are fleeing south with the Alawites to areas where the Israelis have established a protected zone for the Druze. That's another ethnic group in danger there. One young Christian woman put it this way, quote, "The current conflict in Syria does not concern me, but we are its victims. I feel a mix of both fear and anticipation for what lies ahead in Syria, but I feel certain that migration is the only option," end quote. In the wake of the killings, Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, has called for unity and promised justice against the murderers. But he's been linked in the past with groups associated with al-Qaeda, so he's not highly trusted by the minorities. And even more concerning is just how common it is for feuds like these, especially in Muslim-controlled lands like Syria, to bring opportunistic persecution of Jews and Christians. It's not entirely clear in this case whether the Christians are being intentionally targeted because they're Christians or just because they're there. But still, our brothers and sisters, members of one of the oldest Christian communities on the planet, are suffering greatly right now. According to the book of Acts, it was in the Syrian city of Antioch that followers of Christ were first called Christians. Along with Alexandria, Rome, Constantinople, and Jerusalem, Antioch was one of the 5 major centers of Christian life. And since it's endured centuries of war and Muslim persecution, but the chaos of the last few years has only made things worse. A majority of Christians fled during the Civil War, leaving as few as 300,000 remaining in the country. And right now, that remnant is being targeted. It's also important to know that the recent terror in Syria is one in a recent string of incidents of Christian persecution. Just last month, an Islamic group in Congo killed some 70 Christians in a church. After being kidnapped, these Christians were, and I quote here, tied up and decapitated with knives. And of course, similar stories have come out of Nigeria over the last few years, especially every Christmas and every Easter holiday. Henrietta Blythe of the persecution watchdog Open Doors UK in Ireland said this, quote, "The persecution of Christians around the world is one of the great untold scandals of the 21st century. In fact, some 380 million Christians face persecution today. Jesus said that his church would be hated in this world. Everywhere we look, we see that that's true. Christ died for his church. When the world hates them, Jesus said, it's because the world hated him first. He loves his church. And you know what? We should too, both here and around the globe." For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Dr. Timothy Paget. And for more resources to live like a Christian today, you can visit us at breakpoint.org.
All right, John, thank you. Outside next, Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast for this afternoon. A fair amount of sunshine and milder than yesterday with high temperatures into the 50s, so it will be chillier near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, 40s. Tonight, some moonshine, low temps 30s. Tomorrow, some sunshine, high temps 60s, cooler near the lakes. On Saturday, limited sun, mild breezy, a couple of scattered showers, and high temperatures in the 60s. More numerous showers and a few rumbles Saturday night going into Sunday.
right, Kevin, thank you very much. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price, and there's a lot to get to Thursday, March 13th. The threat of a government shutdown is looming large today. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer vows to obstruct a GOP-crafted spending bill that funds Uncle Sam through September. Florida Senator Ashley Moody says if there is a shutdown, it'll be the Schumer shutdown.
We're going to do everything we can to keep this government open. We're going to be the adults. We're going to let them throw their tantrum. But at the end of the day, we need to deliver for the American people, and we need to start cutting spending and making sure that we don't drive this country off a cliff by spending it to death.
The deadline to reach a deal is midnight Friday. Republicans need the support of 6 Democrats to get the bill across the finish line, and right now, they don't have it. President Trump has a meeting of the minds today at the White House with the Secretary General of NATO. Correspondent Stacey Lynn.
The president has repeatedly criticized NATO, which was formed to counter Soviet aggression during the Cold War. He's accused the alliance of not paying its fair share for military spending, recently saying the United States would not defend members who did not pay. And he's expressed uncertainty that NATO would come to the defense of the U.S. if the country were attacked. Stacey Lynn, Washington.
President Trump did say yesterday that NATO can be a force for good, but he wants member states to foot more of the bill for the safety and security of Ukraine. Rebecca Heinrichs at the Hudson Institute has her doubts that a peace deal with Russia can ever be achieved.
If Russia does not stop its assault against Ukraine, we're not going to have a ceasefire. We can't move on to the next phase. Russia is demanding that Ukraine completely, quote, demilitarize. If Russia is going to oppose all of that, we're not going to get to a peaceful solution.
Trump envoy Steve Witkoff is meeting this week in Moscow with Russian ruler Vladimir Putin. A federal judge says Columbia University grad student Mahmoud Khalil will remain behind bars, but he cannot be deported. The 30-year-old's become the poster child for Gaza war protests at that Ivy League school and others. Border czar Tom Homan says Khalil needs to be kicked out of the country.
We consider him a national security threat. When you go to a college campus, you incite protesting, taking over buildings, damaging property, and handing out leaflets for Hamas. And I hear freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Free speech has limitations.
Khalil's being held by ICE agents in Louisiana. He has a green card, which has some arguing that his detention is illegal. The Arab agitator is a native of Syria and moved to this country 3 years ago. His American wife is 8 months pregnant. In Waterbury, Connecticut, police say a woman there held her stepson captive for over 2 decades. Correspondent Adriana Diaz.
Kimberly Sullivan stood in a Connecticut courtroom yesterday accused of cruelty and abusing her stepson for more than 20 years. Police say the victim, who is now 32 years old, told them he was kept a secret his entire life, locked away in his 8 by 9 foot room since he was 11. The emaciated man, who at 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighed only 68 pounds when he was found by police. He says he was pulled out of school in the 4th grade and had no contact with anyone.
Reporter Roger Suzanin tells us how the victim was able to escape.
He set a fire in his own bedroom, and when firefighters rushed to the scene, he suffered smoke inhalation and was taken to a hospital. And when he got to the hospital, he told emergency responders the whole sordid story about how he had been essentially a prisoner in his own home for more than 20 years.
The stepmother denies mistreating her son. President Trump's threatening to slap a 200% tax on European wine, champagne, and spirits if the EU goes ahead with that 50% tax on American whiskey.
The White House faces even more pressure from around the world as the president's tariff war continues, as the Canadian finance minister and Ontario's top leader are set to be in Washington today to meet with the Commerce Secretary to try to wind down this trade war.
CBS's Ed O'Keefe, an astronaut rescue mission, has suffered a setback. SpaceX had to scrub last night's launch of a Falcon 9 rocket due to a hydraulics problem. Here's Mission Control with that disappointing news.
Dragon SpaceX hatches open, so we'll be handing you off to the closeout team for egress. Sorry we couldn't get you off today, but we'll speak to you soon and look forward to trying it again.
They'll try again tomorrow night to send a capsule to the International Space Station. SpaceX is dropping off 4 astronauts and will return home two who've been up there for more than 9 months. Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams were originally supposed to stay for just 10 days. NBC's Tom Costello has more on the timeline for getting them home.
If this, in fact, goes up tomorrow at 7:03 p.m., then we would expect them to dock with the space station early Saturday morning. And under the best scenario, Butch and Sonny would then be splashing down probably next Wednesday off the coast of Florida. It's not clear if that's going to be in the Gulf or in the Atlantic, but that's yet to be determined. That is if they go tomorrow night, right? And if everything goes well on docking, if they do the handover well up in space, they could decide they need an extra couple days for the handover. You never know, because this is very much an active mission.
Tom Costello at Cape Canaveral. You're listening to the Noon Report for Thursday on Family Life.
It's Faith Under Fire, the Family Life news feature when we invite you to listen to voices from religious battlefields. I'm Greg Gillespie. Sometimes this program takes you to legal or governmental or cultural battlefields, but today we look more personally at the battlefield that happens within each of us. Some Christians have a very strong emphasis on certain Lenten practices. Others, that's less important than just year-round spiritual growth and seasons of focusing on faith. For perspectives on that kind of spiritual growth, we have as our guest today Dr. Brian Black, who teaches Bible and church history at Penview Bible Institute in Penns Creek, Pennsylvania, in the middle of the Commonwealth. Let's talk about what is significant about this time of year and finding ways to strengthen and deepen a person's faith.
During this time of Lent, when a lot of people focus on spiritual renewal, I would like to encourage people to really just get to where they contact with God. What we need more than anything else, I feel like, is a personal encounter with Jesus Christ. It seems to transform who we are. One of the things that we do a lot of times in the springtime, basically at Lent season, we will have revival services in our churches where we have an evangelist come in, and for maybe 5-6 nights, we will have services, then 2 services on Sunday to try to renew people's spiritual life. And I think getting together as a group to try to rally together to encourage each other is a very positive thing that we do. We generally call in some kind of a special evangelist that does this a lot. And we try to spend extra time in prayer. Sometimes there's a fasting that goes on before and during the revival as we try to encourage people and preach in such a way that people will recognize if they've been doing things they shouldn't be doing, they will make a change.
You mentioned fasting, and some people give up chocolate for Lent or give up either daytime eating or all eating. What are the spiritual benefits that can come from people who use fasting as a spiritual practice?
I think when we fast, it helps us to focus on the fact that we need the help of God in our lives, and we need to see God move among our people, and it focuses our attention that direction. Mostly when we would fast, we would skip a meal and simply not eat for that meal. Often we do that on Wednesdays here at the school, for example.
Our guest today on the Family Life News feature is Dr. Brian Black, who teaches at Penview Bible Institute in Penns Creek. I'd love to get your perspective on how this young generation is doing. You deal with them on a day-to-day basis. What's the spiritual life of young people these days?
We come from a pretty conservative group, and we've got a lot of young people that are very sold out to serve God. And we're a ministry-focused school. Most of our students will go out into missionary work, to preaching, or Christian day school teaching, children's ministry, or something of that nature. They're very committed.
The young generation coming up, I think often people say, oh, these kids today, they've lost their faith and church isn't important and they're out playing soccer on Sundays instead of going to church. But you see a different side of these young people that are really making a difference in their communities, demonstrating faith, sharing the gospel in special ways. What encouragement does that give for you, and how can that help our listeners understand that, no, it's not a case of all hope is lost. There is a lot of good happening in the church with these new upcoming leaders?
Young people today, in my opinion, are looking for something that is worthwhile to give their lives to. They want a vision of making a difference in some way or another. And if we can somehow translate that to the young people, at least the young people I work with, they're looking for that. And they're pushing that direction, I'll put it that way. So I'm encouraged by what I see. I recognize in the bigger picture there's some discouraging things, but everybody's not going that way.
Dr. Brian Black teaches church history and Bible in Penns Creek, Pennsylvania, at the Penview Bible Institute. I'm Greg Gillespie. Thanks for listening to Faith Under Fire from Family Life News.
Thank you very much, Greg. Faith Under Fire comes your way Thursdays at noon. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature, as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Well, we've lost our cool. The chilly day of yesterday is giving way to a milder day today, and that trend will continue tomorrow. Over the weekend, we expect some fairly mild air as well, but the approach of a potent cold front brings a rising chance of showers. I think the wettest or wetter of the 2 days this week, it will be Sunday. In the meantime, for this afternoon, a fair amount of sunshine and milder than yesterday with high temperatures into the 50s, though it will be chillier near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, 40s. Tonight, some moonshine, low temps 30s. Tomorrow, some sunshine, high temps 60s, cooler near the lakes. On Saturday, limited sun, mild breezy, a couple of scattered showers, and high temperatures in the 60s. More numerous showers and a few rumbles Saturday night going into Sunday.
All right, Kevin, thanks for the update. Finally at noon, don't miss it, folks. A total lunar eclipse happens early tomorrow. If you're up, take a look. Mark Mayfield has a preview.
Experts say a full moon called a blood moon will make the moon appear red during a total lunar eclipse that's going to peak at 2:55 a.m. Eastern Friday morning. The entire eclipse will start late Thursday night, lasting roughly 6 hours. It will be visible from the Earth's western hemisphere, with prime viewing conditions across North and South America. Spectators don't need anything special to watch the eclipse, but experts warn that light pollution and weather conditions can impact the view, and binoculars could help. I'm Mark Mayfield.
All right, so that's something to look forward to. Thank you very much, Mark. And just like that, we're out of time. That's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, March 13th. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.